All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another, bold dead air era of Huskers Happy Hour. As always, through this stumbling opening, you can tell that anyone can have a podcast, and I sure fall into barely anyone into that pool. So here we go this evening. It's still it's a pretty active little bowl lead up, whatever you want to call it. Um, a lot going on. We've been hiring new coaches. It's nowhere near last year, which it feels that way because Dylan Raiola entered the portal. But remember, it was just like a flush of defensive starters to the portal last year when Tony White left for Florida State, took everybody with him. So it's not quite after Dylan. It's not exactly a who's who. Probably the biggest name after Dylan to enter, and I'm sorry to see this guy go. Little Malcolm Hartzog, as a friend of mine once said, he goes, if Hartzog was 6'1", he'd be an All-American, but he's not. He's 5'7", and so you see, it just seemed like always him going up against receivers 4, 5, 6 inches taller and doing the best he could. And I would say the highlight of his career was uh, making that pick against Cincinnati to save another, one score loss, if you like, to start the season. And right before that, I think he'd gotten a defensive holding call, which added 10 yards to a long completion. And tell me when I'm wrong, if I'm wrong when I say that everybody was kind of in, oh, holy crap, here we go again mode when that happened. So I'm going to miss Malcolm. I think he was a guy. I was not a big fan of Eric Shenander as a defensive coordinator, but I give him full credit for pulling Hartzog. I believe it was Mississippi where he came from, and he was there to look at some other player, a higher rated player, and one of the coaches had come up to him and gone, the biggest secret here is this little guy. And I think he was playing both ways. I think he was a running back as well. He's like, check out this Hartzog guy. He's the one who you really want to be taking out of here. And he checked him out, and he did. But he's going into the portal. I just don't know if, he was told it was going to be a battle to get his spot back, or he just wanted, fresh start. Maybe he just wants to go find some place down south closer to home for his last year. Who knows? I will say this about the portal for as many people, my thought on it is if they're a college student, if they want to leave, I don't see how you can legally keep them from doing it like any other college student who feels like going to another school. NIL aside, that's just a right they have. And they've even said they're not going to try and the schools have basically said we're not going to go to court and try to now lock them down into multi-year contracts or block their portal access. I think they've lost enough of those in the courts. Then they've managed to tighten up NIL a little bit, so it's not just so much a mad donation that just finds their way into their pockets and then they find something for them to do. I think that it now has to be more of a tight agreement between player and whoever, and they'll help them find that where it's available, but it's not going to be quite the donations flying in however they made that work. But anyway, Hartzog's leaving. We found out I think there was a freshman, Caden Vandermoss, local kid. He's leaving. And then we also had Maverick Noonan. And you really felt like this was one of the best examples of bad luck. He enrolled early, and from all accounts at the time was doing really well in spring ball. And then I think it was about a week or two before the spring game, he was injured, missed the season, and just never seemed to get back to that spot. So in that case, maybe a fresh start, drop down a little is the way to go if he wants to play. Just never quite got the leap here after that injury. So I get that. And then Marcos Davila, and we'll talk about this a little more later. It explained why you could really see this coming a long way away. He was a fourth string redshirt freshman who transferred from Purdue this year. And he's from all accounts and from what I saw, he throws a really nice ball. Gramstead, the thing that kept Gramstead ahead was I think he was after Raiola, the guy who knew the playbook just inside out. And so those were like the portal entries. Let's see. Let's take a look at what comments are here. Justin Rogge making a late season surge for our imaginary Corn Nation trophy for getting in first on the Triple H. He is first. Fred's getting in second. Said he's got a party tonight, so probably won't be there, but is second nonetheless. Wants us to know. Beetleby grabs the bronze. Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas to you, Beetle. And James Boardman, I think he's watching tonight. The New Orleans Bulls, an ugly mess. 19 penalties. The entire Southern Miss team received an unsportsmanlike penalty. Players and coaches, 3 turnovers, and numerous injuries. And I wanted to show you guys something. I've got it on the website. Let me bring this up on the phone, and I'll just kind of show you into the screen here. If you go into the feed, right now it's the third one down, and it just says your full CFB college football postseason TV schedule. And if you go in there, it's a damned if they don't. Somebody did just put together let's see, I'm going to get that up there so it doesn't reflect too badly. But anyway, it's just a big spreadsheet, and it has every game. It's got like the every game on TV. It's got like all the bowls, CFP, the division, the 1AA, the Division 2, Division 3 games that are going to be on TV. Just really neat to have right in front of you on a spreadsheet. So what do we have tonight? It is, was it Ohio? Well, he's watching Southern Miss. Looks like Southern Miss, Western Kentucky. And that looks like that's getting late in that game. And then after that will be Ohio, UNLV on ESPN. And I'm not sure, did they put all the dang bowl names down? They've got the bowl logos, but I don't know. There's looks like a cup of coffee, so whatever the hell that is. You're on your own for the names of the bowls, but yeah, sounds like I would imagine like something like this for 19 penalties. I'd imagine would be somewhat senior led. Who was it one time that it was out in the Hawaii Bowl, and I think they had Hawaii against Houston or something, and it just turned into a benches clearing brawl at the end to where guys got suspended next year. So I imagine the seniors were just swinging away and let it all hang out. And Hawaii had this Samoan dude, and he's got the grass skirt. He was the drum beater, and he's running around there and basically what's shirtless and shorts, and maybe he had a headdress or something, but he had to be 290 pounds, and he was in there brawling with the guys in pads, and not being in the middle of it. I just found it. I found it entertaining and hilarious, and I mean, just absolute disgrace. Shouldn't happen, but. Yeah, if you're having a few drinks watching that late night bowl game and just everybody decides to hell with it. And I think the funniest thing of that one was the announcers had said, well, because they won a couple of overtimes, I think. They won a few overtimes, and guys are like, well, geez, they were looking, a little tired at the end of the game, but they found new life for the fight after an overtime game. So, yay. Vince Watson is here as always, and he says, when do they start enforcing the 105? I believe they start enforcing it next year, but you won't necessarily see 105 because when they came too close to the finish line and weren't going to make it, and they let everybody just kind of go again, you got to put down a list of guys who were on the roster this year who wouldn't have been. Like I think you submitted something like, and I might have the particulars wrong, but this is kind of the way I remember it, is you'd submit your 105, but here are the guys you were going to keep on the roster, and all of those guys can be grandfathered through until you're truly down to the 105. So you can keep these guys kind of, like I guess your hey, the walk-on program survives for a little bit, is whoever you had, and I think Nebraska went in there carrying like 122 or 123. So of those 17 guys, I think a couple of them are seniors, but generally I think the way it is those guys get to hang in there as not part on the team, not counting as part of the 105 until they, leave, graduate out, whatever. And every now and then you do have a guy that just decides, I'm beat up enough and I'm ready just to go to school. And I don't know. I think they've got it for football in Lincoln. I know they had it for hockey and UNO, is that anybody who ran out of eligibility, so couldn't play hockey any longer, they had I think the alumni got together and everybody donated for an annual scholarship to the guy that they would choose a player. who hadn't earned his degree but was out of eligibility, and then give him like another year for free. Just pretty nice deal there. Dom Bullock, hello there. Hey, Dom, and Go Big Red. Hello to you, buddy. He says his Cavs, I assume that's Virginia, are playing in the Gator Bowl against Missouri. We'll go Cavs. I like the Cavs for kind of starting to turn the football world on its ear. They really did turn the college football world on its ear a couple times this year when they beat Florida State. And this is, I think, a week or two after Florida State smokes Alabama and makes people think that, hey, this is the comeback story of the year. And then Florida State goes on to go like 4-8, not make a bowl, and I think everybody's being fired or whatever. And then they managed to lose to Duke in overtime of the ACC playoff game. Therefore, Duke grabs a conference championship. And because they did, if Virginia had won that game, Virginia would have gotten the 4th spot and Tulane the 5th spot, and nobody would be like bitching about James Madison because they wouldn't be the number 5 ranked team. And even then, Madison, hey, they did cover. They did cover against Oregon. They were getting killed at halftime, decided not to quit, and I think ended up only losing by 17. And all of a sudden, Oregon, who people were going, well, they look great again. Now there's a little like, not so sure about Oregon anymore. I guess my attitude on that was, don't be too quick to dismiss James Madison, just because, hey, what team was it that sent a pile of transfers to Indiana and helped flip that team into a top 10 team, going from what they go from 3-9 or 2-10 to the college football playoff last year. So, that they've got a pretty solid program going on down there. I could make a whole show about Notre Dame and their whining and complaining. Yeah, do they deserve to be in there? Yeah, but not as strongly as you think, because the whole reason, they started off by trying to say they deserve to be in over Miami. The country online laughed at them just uproariously. They beat you. You lost head to head. And so then they turned their attention to Alabama. They've got 3 losses, but we don't have to join a conference. It's like, well, the reason they have 3 losses is because they are in a conference, and you didn't have to take that chance. And everybody was saying, well, you can't hold losing in a conference, the conference title game against the team, so you're really supposed to treat them like a 2-loss team. And so if you do it like that, then they're still in. Notre Dame's still out. And their strength of schedule was a top 10 strength of schedule. Notre Dame's was in the 30s or 40s, depending on where you looked at it. So, yeah, they probably did still deserve to be there over you. But then just my favorite comment, I won't, waste hours on all of them because the stupid ones were just too many and too dumb to be believed. But was when their athletic director, when he was throwing his little pouty boy fit at, like live press conference or whatever, and he's like, and people forget, after we lost those 2 games to 2 playoff teams, we put on one of the greatest 10-game runs in the last 5 decades or more of college football. And I'm like, dude, that schedule is just filled with losing teams. And yet, I'm sure pick the Indiana 10-game stretch where they beat Oregon and Ohio State. You didn't have the best 10-game run in college football in the last 5 decades. You didn't even have the best 10-game run in Indiana in 2025. So shut up. But anyway, the playoff continues. And also for the 20 to 25 years before last year's CFP, when Notre Dame did make the final, but in that last 20 to 25 years, they were constantly going to a New Year's Day bowl they didn't belong in, but they wouldn't go to any other bowl. So they'd squeeze them 7-4 into a New Year's Day bowl, and they'd get smoked, like, for example, 38-9 by Oregon State when they had TJ Hushmanzada and Chad Ochocinco, or into a BCS final where they get basically in BCS finals, CFP games, CFP, semifinal or later, or a New Year's Day major bowl, sugar, orange, rose, or fiesta. They I think lost just about every one of those games, and their average margin of loss in that period was something like close to 20, like 19.4 points per game. So they deserved, they were screaming about Tulane's going to get blown out, James Madison's going to get blown out. They both, pretty much did. but that's exactly what Notre Dame did every time they squeezed them in with that. But if Notre Dame's ranked here, and they're going back to it next season, where not only do you still not have to join a conference, so therefore you never have to risk another loss playing in a conference title game. But now, if they're just ranked in the top 12, they're in. No, special Notre Dame rule: top 12, you're in, despite making it weaken for them a little. Like, go to the ACC, win that title game every year, and boom. And ACC, by the way, fix whatever tiebreaker. I didn't go to look at it. I think it would just make me sadder. But whatever tiebreaker you have that allowed Duke in over Miami, might want to tweak that in the offseason. There's no shame in tweaking things in the offseason. So let's see. The bowl game is the Scooters. The one I was talking about, the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. Both Vince and James spotted that for me. Thank you. Beetleby has a Merry Christmas. Everyone go Big Red. Yeah, before I forget, we're fully into football. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, Happy whatever. Happy Holidays is just like whatever the heck you're celebrating, because everybody's celebrating something. Have a very happy one. That's it. Love all you guys. Let's see. And Dom Bullock is saying our head coach Tony Ellett has made us a future CFP threat. Dude, if you'd have beaten Duke, you'd be a current CFP threat. Come on, man. I don't mean to stick the knife in a little. I know you. That's not what you wanted either. Good job, Tony Elliott. Virginia did have a fine season this year. I don't think a lot of people saw it coming. Here's a Go Big Red from Justin. High Mountain guy is in. What do we got here? Oregon has been getting far too much credit for years. They very rarely dominate anyone despite their deep pockets and flashy gear. God, that's mixed well. I always feel like Archer when I do that. Any fans of the Archer series out there? That one of the funniest shows all time. I know some people kind of shut the gate at cartoons or whatever. Archer's just next level. There's just so many just home run lines that you need to stop laughing or else you miss something. All I'll say is, like, about in one of the first scenes of Archer, he goes in, he's arguing with his mother, who runs their like private spy agency, which is funny in and of itself. Spy agencies for hire, and they're insulting the shit out of each other because he's caught her doing something that she shouldn't be doing in the office by herself, shall we say. And she's like asking him, "Don't you knock?" And he's like, "Well, can't you control yourself?" And the insults are flying. And then he storms out with his drink, sticks his head back in. And all I'll say is, I did not know what this meant, but he leans back in and tells her Johnny Bench called, then slams the door. And I Googled Johnny Bench and just laughed my ass off. So I Googled Johnny Bench called. And if you do that, you'll, on something like Urban Dictionary, you'll find the answer. But yeah, Oregon, they kind of, to me, are a little bit like the Nebraska teams of Tom Osborne that couldn't quite get over the hump. They do get in some tight games, but they win some of those tight games. Remember, they did not lose a Big Ten conference game until Indiana beat them this year. They went undefeated in the conference last year in the conference schedule. And then, Indiana snapped that string. And this is a tough little conference. And so they're that team that is starting to wonder a little bit if they're cursed in a different way, like we did. Like, oh my God, we get to that game, and they're not having to go play Miami in the Orange Bowl on their home field every year. It's not quite that bad, but still, they've got a program that's kind of set itself in the top 5, and they just quite can't get over that hump. So I don't know that they're getting too. I feel like they're getting about the right amount of credit. I don't think anybody's saying, oh, they're getting a bad knock or whatever. They had their chance last year, and Ohio State, after losing by 1 to them, put the hurting on them in the college football playoff. So I think that they're right there. They're right there. And when you're right there and you're staying right there, I'm not really going to jump on you that you're overrated. Getting too much credit is a little strong probably, because I feel like they get about the right credit. I don't feel like anybody's out there saying that they're better than everybody else, and it's like but they're right there with everybody else at the top. So that's my feelings on Oregon's. Also, a completely unrelated thing. I love their mascot. That duck is funnier than hell. That when they joined the conference and did the tour of Big Ten, of him trying to break into all the Big Ten stadiums, that was pretty damn funny. That I just remembered seeing the picture when they tweeted him out in Lincoln, and he's just sitting there, and all you see is him from the back, like hanging from the bars, like the big front gates or whatever, to get into the stadium. That was good stuff for me. Let's see. Oh, Stephen Fromm. We got a Notre Dame guy. There's a lot of Nebraska. Will Compton has just been insane, just going overboard about this Notre Dame thing. So Stephen says, how dare you talk badly about Notre Dame, Andy? Yes, I do. Notre Dame has put more players into the NFL than any other college football program. Laugh out loud. So he might be tongue-in-cheeking this one here. Yeah, that's the thing. It's Notre Dame, I think, had a good argument. Not it's us and you guys are idiots if you don't put us in. That's the way they're going overboard on the whole thing. No, you weren't a shoe-in. You were right there with three teams. You were the odd team out. If it was me, I'd probably nudge them in a little ahead of Alabama because Alabama's last loss. I'm sorry you did play the game, and Georgia held your offense to nothing, so you lost by 21. That's kind of like the argument with Texas trying to get in with 3 losses. I'm like, you're not even a part of this discussion. You went to overtime with 2 bad teams. You lost to a 4-8 Florida team. Your last chance against a highly ranked team, again, Georgia, you lost by 25. So yeah, you're gone from that one. What was funny was when it came down to the whole Alabama thing again, because what everybody I think in the SEC was hoping was that it would take the twist so that Alabama but then they'd still had to lose a game to do that because Alabama was in. So they really weren't escaping the SEC title game, I guess. Because the way it worked out was Texas A&M and Alabama were in as long as they both won. And then if Texas A&M lost and Bama won, then Georgia was going in. And if they both lost, I think it was going to be a Georgia-Mississippi rematch if they both lost their games. So, yeah, Alabama was going to have to play that game one way or another. They did play it. There's a minus 21 against a top 5 team. So that's what, to me, that's where are you going there? Are you going on Alabama having a much higher ranked strength of schedule? At that point, I'm almost going against those 2 teams. And I probably would nudge Notre Dame in over Alabama. But then you might catch me on a Thursday with a couple in me and, oh, no, I've changed my mind. It's Bama over Notre Dame. But the thing, I talked about this, I think, at the end last week for anyone who was still hanging around. You find out about a person or people by how they react to adversity. Now, I think we all knew this Notre Dame explosion was coming because adversity and Notre Dame have never been in the same sentence when it comes to Notre Dame getting what they want from college football and the NCAA. With the BCS, with the CFP, there are always the little special Notre Dame writers in there, where you should be going, hey, conference title games are a huge part of this. Conference title games can get you punted, from the number 1 ranking, from from a higher seed before it could get you just, clean punted out of the title game when it was 2 or 4 teams. And not only like say, because remember with the Big 12, that very first year, they bumped back Baylor and was it TCU? Baylor and TCU. They bumped them back and move Ohio State up. And they didn't say anything about this, in the rules before when they formed the whole setup for the committee, the rules and regs and what they're supposed to base everything on, stuff like eye test and injured players and that bullshit. But they didn't have anything out there about you have to play in a conference title game. They never have. But just for that season only to jump Ohio State over those 2 because they won by a pretty good margin on like an 8-4 Wisconsin team in the Big Ten title game. They use the reasoning. You don't get to play in this unless you play in a conference title game. And that was it. Your conference doesn't have one. It's unfair to everybody else. Now it's like, so that also would seem to make it unfair to everybody else if Notre Dame doesn't, being, the most prominent independent. I think about the only one left, maybe. But they got rid of, to be fair, they got rid of it 2 years later when Alabama lost to LSU, doesn't even win their division, and gets to be in the 14 college football playoff, because that time, you know what we said about having to make your play in a title game? Yeah, we were kidding. Eye test, Alabama's in. So I don't know. To me, it was just hilarious to see Notre Dame for the first time ever not get what they want. And I talked about, so here it is. You're facing adversity. A decision didn't go your way. How are you going to react? Wah! Oh, it is still, because now they've decided that they would be favored and beat anyone in the college football playoff, despite a 0-2 record against college football playoff teams. But they're like, we would be favored against anybody. It's like, you wouldn't even be favored in state. Like against Indiana, you wouldn't be favored. You wouldn't be. Yeah, you would not be favored to anybody else in there. Stop being freaking silly. Just because you went out and beat some 2-10 and 4-8 teams by big margins, you had your chance to prove yourself twice. You didn't do it. They were literally, and I think this was another one. It's like, God love you, Will Compton. But he was saying, like, hey, would have beaten any of these teams by 30, they're 50 or something like that in the Miami Texas A&M game. They're coming in. We would be creaming these teams. This is awful. Notre Dame belongs in there. I think they're ignoring like the 50-mile-an-hour winds whipping around in that game. You played both those teams. They both beat you. You can't stand in there and say we're 30 points better. No, you're not. You had a chance to prove it. You lost straight up. Oh, there I go on Notre Dame again. But I'm just trying to say, it's like they're acting like a conference doesn't matter. It does. It's a step you might. Let's say you go in the ACC, you go 12-0, and boy, it'd be nice at that point not to, let's say, play an 11-1 SMU or something like that, because at that point you're like, this gains. It becomes one of those games. It gains us nothing. It could cost us everything. Well, now it's not going to bump you out of the tournament. If you're 12-0, you're going to be in the top 2 or 3 at the worst. So you're not getting bounced from the playoff, but you might get bounced from that top 4. So I don't know. It's just, you're not the shoe-in you think you are. It sucks. It's fine to bitch, but these claims, and then like they're winning this hypothetical national championship right now. The funniest is right out of the gate, you get Oklahoma and Alabama going, and they're like, and Oklahoma's going to beat Alabama, and that's going to prove once and for all that we should be in over Alabama. And Oklahoma goes up 17-0, and sports social media explodes with Notre Dame fans declaring their top 3 status, and this is a joke. We will beat anybody. And then Alabama makes a rousing comeback, and the social media stuff kind of tapers down to grumble, grumble, grumble. Well, they both stink. They both suck, and we're better than both. And grumble, grumble, growl. But anyway, so it is. Let's see what else we got going on. I'll try my best to leave Notre Dame alone for the rest of the night, but gosh, I don't know what I'm going to see on Twitter either. Let's see. Justin Rogie, what is Happy Frieza Day? It sounds delicious. James Boardman, and that's how you get ants. Scooter's Frisco Bowl here in Frisco, Texas. I've been to Frisco, Texas. We used to have an office of my former employer in Frisco, and it was my department that just had a smaller office down there. And my daughter, you've seen Miley a bunch of times, her freshman year, her team made the ACHA D1 Hockey Nationals, and they held that down in Frisco. And I think it's at the Dallas Stars like mini practice arena rink or whatever. And so I've been to Frisco. So let's see, being played at the Ford Center, which is the Dallas Cowboys practice facility. So cheers to practice facilities. I hope you enjoyed the kids last week. I was glad to have Miley. She did a pretty good job of summing up the year end. I tweeted it out that I feel that, it's nothing if it doesn't happen, it's nothing I'm going to stomp my feet and scream and yell about. But I feel like that Nebraska is absolutely should finish the rank. I don't know if they came out yet, but the final rankings should have them number 2 in the country. And no, with good reason, not just, oh, and we were so great all year, which we were, that counts, undefeated season. But, the 5-setter against A&M, unbelievable. One of the just, eat the fingers matches. Nebraska, coming back from down 2-0, that 37-35 fourth set, which has to just be a set for the ages. I don't have the encyclopedia of volleyball in my head like football, but you'd have to show me a better single set than that one. Maybe somewhere in there's like a 53-51 where nobody would give an inch. But anyway, Texas A&M then rolls through the Final Four 3-0-3-0. So, it's like some people are like talking about what maybe they were seeded a little wrongly there with like a third regional seed, and instead of a little higher. Doesn't matter. We don't run into them and they'll beat us. But I'm just saying we lost one game, and that was giving the national champion its biggest challenge in the NCAA tournament, I think. Louisville. They came back from down 2-0 to Louisville to beat Louisville, I believe. But Final Four, sweep. We're number 2. We beat Pitt. We're 1-0 against Pitt, 2-0 against Wisconsin. We're the number 2 team in the country. Disappointing, yes, but what a ride. What the hell? Yeah, and believe me, I get nervous because this happens a lot to Nebraska in volleyball now for been 7, 8, 9 years since they last won a title, but they keep making the Final Four, and then holy shit, what's happening now? And I didn't see that coming, but congrats to Texas A&M. Wait, this isn't I thought Festivus was the same December 25th. Is that a few days early? Because by God, I got to get that metal pole out, because you know what? I got a lot of problems with you people, and tonight you're going to hear about it. Probably not. Let's see. Here we got Justin Rogie says, Nebraska Rascal, even crazier Scooters Coffee started in Omaha, Nebraska. I thought that was true. I'm glad you said that, and I didn't have to wonder about it. Good deal. Let's see. Where did who we got? Ernie Bonistal, 2517. Hello and welcome. I'd like non-power fours go undefeated and beat 1 or 2 power 4 top 25 simple smell test. Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad requirement. Here's the thing, though, and here's why all the Notre Dame I got tired of having to explain to those people. They did not get selected over you. That was a done deal before the season started. Last year we had top five conference, or was it 4 power 4 automatically get in, 4 power 4 champions, and then the highest ranked power 5, and then the top 4 ranked conference champions got the top 4 seeds. They got rid of that, so you still had 5 champions in last year. What messed it up this year, man, was Duke. Because when Duke got in, it never the hubris, the assumed entitlement, whatever you want to call it, of that committee was that you would never get 2 mid-major conference champions to be ranked higher than it would be the ACC or the Big 12. Maybe the Big 12's pulling ahead of the ACC. I'd have to look. That would be my bet. That'd be my guess at first glance. But what was I going to say? Yeah, they just had too much hubris to think that the American Conference and the Coastal, or whatever these conferences are called, that 2 of those champions would finish ahead of a P4 champion in the rankings, and it happened. And so that's what really got people steamed, was thinking you selected, and I did not know they'd change that until the last few weeks, because I was assuming all they did was get rid of that top 4, but then they changed it from all power 4 champs and highest ranked G5 to top 5 ranked conference champs, any conference. So yeah, so they did not get selected ahead of Notre Dame and BYU and whoever else. They were guaranteed, as I think it was Tulane was at like 22 and Madison was at 25 and Duke was unranked. So those 2 are in with the Southeast Big 10 and Big 12 champs. And that had nothing to do with anything that happened in that room. Basically, in either way, even let's say Virginia does get in, Notre Dame's still in trouble because James Madison's out, but Virginia at number 18 is in, and those two slots at 11 and 12 are still taken. So that didn't really matter. Where they've got a fighting chance is that now Miami, if they do it where Miami's the tiebreak champ, they're ranked 12, and now there's not really a slot being taken away at that point. But then if they're in that slot anyway, maybe they're still screwed. I don't know, but it's not the everyone's an idiot they want you to think. I tweak it. That the BCS tweaked it every year, and I feel the dumbest thing they did when they went to the from the BCS to the college football playoff, which was still 4 teams to start. They just changed the name, put everybody in a room instead of having what the BCS had was a formula, and you went to that formula and they tweaked it, and sometimes there was a little argument about 2 versus 3, but I don't know. I liked it right there. I still remember one of the funniest things was they'd still have a selection show, and they probably told the coaches, pretend you're idiots and didn't figure this out before. And McCartney always had that weird look on Bill McCartney always had that weird look on his face, so I wondered if he was truly an idiot, because he shows up with his little special football in a glass case with little logo stickies of all the teams they beat, and he's sitting there with that weird look on his face. It's like, dude, I did the math. You can do the math. I did the math. Nebraska's in. And I'm calling friends to tell them that. How do you know that? Because the formula is right there online. You can look it up. And what they did was, I think, they melted in like your average ranking, AP, UPI. Then they had like 6 or 7 different computer rankings. So you're getting them from different sources. And then if you had a loss, that was a minus. You wanted to have the lowest score possible. So that was a +1 for each loss. And that's where Colorado was in trouble right away. I think they had Nebraska and Oregon by rankings, but they had that second loss. They were not a 11-1 team, or they weren't undefeated at 11-1. They were the only 2-loss team in that mix, so they were out. And then let's see, the losses in there. I think there was a couple things, and they would tweak it year to year, and it tightened up. It got better. And the best thing about it, though, was it wasn't a bunch of guys sitting behind closed doors and just making up stuff. Yeah, because I felt like one thing they did when they threw the dudes in the room is they're just like, well, let's it just isn't a good look unless that inside the room is being televised to have them shut the doors, then come out and go, here you go, because you don't know what the fuck deals they're making there, and because then they did stupid things like, hey, but if this team's best player's been hurt or something, we got to take them out. Really? Oh man, that one made me hot, especially with like all the backups that came in and did well. Remember that year Ohio State won? I think that might have been the year that pissed me off because they jumped Baylor and TCU, but I think that's when they had like who's Braxton, whoever. They had the three really good quarterbacks, and I think they won the title with like their second or third string quarterback. But yeah, good player gets hurt. Oh, then we just forget what happened in that season. They're out. The eye test, which was usually a reason to get Alabama or Ohio State in, if they weren't making it in by their actual resume. Eye test. I just think they're awesome, and all that money falling from their pockets really catches my eye, and just the silly shit like that. So yeah, I'd love if they went back to a formula. Then bitch moan about the formula, but whatever. Thanks for getting me going there, Ernie. Let's see. Okay, the Dragon Ball Z thing. I never did do the Dragon Ball Z thing. I am just going William Money all over the Old West and Red Dead Redemption 2, though. Holy moly. I've learned that having a 0 honor score, it can be really entertaining. If nothing else, just for the fact that everybody sasses you. It's like it's like I'm the most prolific mass murderer in just about the history of humanity when it comes to buy my own hand in this game. And yet everybody feels like out alone on the trail in the middle of the wilderness. no matter how many hundreds of people I've gunned down, I'm the guy to smart mouth and, hey, get away from me, shit like that. Love Red Dead Redemption 2. I hope all the SEC teams lose, said Stephen Frome, so all those SEC people can have another year of humble pie. Yeah, that'd mean Ohio State winning again. I just don't hate Ohio State as much as I hate other teams. And shut up about how they're the best conference and football just means more down there. Well, I believe, come, was it, I guess they'd be on January 1st. Indiana, Alabama. That's all I got to say. Because nobody really wants to admit, they just can't get, they see too much Indiana on the jersey and not enough Fernando Mendoza and his guys on, and what they're actually doing on the field, and that they are that physically competitive, and they play good D and they play good offense and come at you every which way. They just see that Indiana and can't get it through their head. And Alabama, man, they lose to Indiana, and a lot of them are expecting it right now, but it hasn't happened yet. Because when it happens, that Kalen DeBoer might wish he'd have taken that Penn State or Michigan job, because it's got to, it's not the kind of heat where they're going to be forced to fire him, but they're not going to be happy. Losing to Indiana will leave a scar. We'll see if it left scars on, probably not on the Ohio State guys. They're young enough that I don't know that it affects them quite that way. But yeah, let's see. Somebody said Nebraska finished third in the final rankings behind Kentucky. Yeah. Okay. Well, whatever. Was Kentucky even in the finals? I thought it wasn't it Wisconsin that A&M beat in the final? Oh, Kentucky. Okay. Still, we beat them too. Fuck them. Yeah. What did Ricky Bobby say? If you're not first, you're last. Let's see. Hey, here you go. No matter how you felt about Miami getting in, they went on the road and knocked off number 3. So do they belong? Yes. So yeah. And hey, nice win against number 11 Notre Dame. Nice win against number 11 Notre Dame. Yeah, way to find a way in that A&M game. Absolutely. Had a couple stumbles middle of the season, and the thing with them, if you looked at like a lot of the the stats, how you compare the teams to each other, Miami and Notre Dame were pretty close to dead even in strength of schedule when all was said and done. Because Notre Dame is like, don't look at the man in the behind the curtain when it came to their rest of their schedule after A&M and Miami. They're like, yeah, that is not important there, my friends. The thing is, we lost to 2 damn good teams, and we want our credit for it. And yeah, you lost to 2 damn good teams, and then those teams played each other, and you said silly stuff like you're 30 points better. Really, yeah. Is there a word? Yeah. Okay, let's read it first. Is there a worse end to a season ever than A&M? Undefeated meets crushed by in-state nemesis, immediately followed by getting swept out of the playoff at home by a team that nobody wanted. Yeah, I won't say that nobody wanted. A team that Notre Dame definitely didn't want. And then, you could, I figure the case was made, though, when Miami beat him. But yeah, it's like, that was, a hell of a way to end the season. It's like, there you are, like number 3. You're looking at, a bye, and you just got to beat Texas. And Texas is that I always considered them like one of the most dangerous opponents for the talent they had. But then they had the Arch factor, where they're that Arch, he's good, he's not bad. Is he number 1 draft pick, Heisman winner that they all said he was at the beginning of the year, without having ever really played in a meaningful game, unless you want to count Mississippi State last year as meaningful? But that was the team that if they could ever get their shit together, you were in trouble, because that was a talented team. And if anybody, I called for Texas to beat A&M. I just said, this is the game A&M always loses. And something about, betting is, hey, you bet the streak, and don't try to guess when the streak ends. Just bet that once that streak gets going 2 or 3 times, you just bet that streak until it ends, and you would have made probably a lot of money. I mean, I believe Texas has kind of owned A&M, haven't they? I just felt like that was almost a gimme, and sure enough, they lost that. And then they get they get the windy weather on the home field, which just kind of turns it into a ground game, I guess. Because neither quarterback had much of a day in that stuff. That one poor field goal kicker ended up 1 for 4. Was that A&M's kicker that ended up 1 for 4, or was that Miami's? But yeah, it was a rough day to be kicking field goals for sure. But yeah, I mean, but I still think that it looks like Trev made a nice hire there, and Mike Elko. At the beginning of the year, if you told A&M fans, and I know they were ranked kind of high, but I don't really feel like anyone's heart was in it. But if you told A&M fans they are going to finish the regular season 11-1 and make the college football playoff, I think most fans would have been, wouldn't be, well, it's a damn disappointment unless we win it all or make the final. I think they would have said we'd call that a successful season. So, Justin, what Trev deserves? Yeah, I told somebody I'm done arguing with Trev, because if I run into anybody from UNO, they just start spitting fire at Trev. And I did not hold it against Trev for leaving Nebraska, given what he had to put up with there, without going into all that, because it wasn't really sports related. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have the same hatred for Trev as everybody else. Gary Pierce does, though. Gary Pierce, Trev Albert sucks. Trev gloating over the volleyball win over Nebraska and a national championship. Trev, though, I believe he did go over and talk to some of the volleyball players afterwards and console them some. Because that's hard to do. And he's the athletic director. The athletic director knows a lot of their athletes. Anybody that follows my my side, I cover softball in the spring. The pod turns into like a 30 minute to an hour weekly softball pod throughout that. And I'll just tell you this, like Olivia Farrell, assistant coach for the Huskers, when they won the Big Ten title in 21, 22, something like that's what really got me going in softball. I just went to cover that up at Michigan State, and Liv Farrell was one of their two ace pitchers with Courtney Wallace, and she actually was going to be a grad assistant that year. Rhonda asked her to use her COVID year for another year of eligibility, because she felt like they had something special, and they did. And now she's like, how old's my daughter? She's like a 26-year-old full-time softball assistant, and deserves it. But I ran into Trev at Big Ten Media Days the first time I went 3 years ago, and just kind of tapped on his shoulder, introduced myself. He talked to me for a little while, and I asked him if he'd gotten to know Liv at all, and Liv Farrell at all, and he turned around and just beamed and just spoke so glowingly of her. And not just what a great athlete he was, but what an incredible person, which she is. And she played hockey with Miley. They played hockey together through high school years. Then I believe she pulled out of hockey her senior year, because Rhonda didn't want one of her top pitchers getting belted around in hockey, I guess, especially in just standing in the crease with rubber pucks flying at her. Not the worst request. We could have used her. The St. Louis team she was on could have used her, but no. So yeah, I just don't find him the bad guy. But I'm not going to start getting. That's just kind of where I leave it. I've had the last of my Trev arguments with people. So let's see what else we got. Nebraska volleyball had its chance. To get a difference maker in the offseason, and Eva Hudson, Tori Stafford, or Mimi McCoyer, but didn't pull the trigger. Instead, we got a very average Landfair. Well, then we got Adriano too. I'm sorry, I love her. She's just adorable. She's just so happy all the time. Okay. So Bork hired Elko. I thought that was Trev. Is this Elko's second year then? Must be. I must have that wrong. Me wrong. Imagine. Let's see who else we got here. Taylor Landfair had the best dad jokes. That's fun. All right. All right. Good run through the comments there. Take another swig here. I'm trying to make that last because I forgot to get a Propel out, and I get the dry mouth, and with no kid to throw it back to this week, I will have to give you a blank screen for a little bit, and you can look at the stadium and at Warren sat behind you there. But let's talk about Utah a little. Let's admit this. They are, if you could draw up a team on paper that just has the best offense for our defense, it's Utah. They can pass it some. They run it a lot, and they run it well, and they score a lot. And as we know, the run defense was not our specialty this year. It was a weak spot even before whatever happened the last two games where, this was like, Phil Snow, what went wrong? Well, you miss assignments. You're not going to make too many tackles. But he even said they just weren't playing with the fire they played with the first 10 games. That went away the last two games. Did it have something to do with John Butler suggesting that they really needed to improve the roster next year and improve, and he needed big guys, and it was pretty apparent what he was saying? I don't know. I like to think that you're not going to get 11 guys in their top reserves just all falling apart because somebody said something like that. You're not going to be happy about it, but geez, I just don't know what happened. It doesn't look like anybody had a real answer. Some people were like, well, why didn't he fix it? Why do you wait this long to try fixing it? Somebody talking about Phil Snow, and I'm like, yeah, Phil, I think that was more John Butler. Phil Snow wasn't the defensive coordinator. Yeah, but wasn't defense his thing? I mean, yeah, but he's not running the show. He was a Yoda. He was the type of guy they go to, if he sees something, maybe he says something. But other than that, they are coming to him, using him as the font of advice and that sort of thing. So, yeah, now, and James comes in. James says, yeah, and I agree with this. It's hard to play for a coach that doesn't respect you, but God, I don't know. My thing as a coach, and I'm the one that did a whole article on how that might have, it wasn't maybe the one thing that got him fired, but I think it played a big part, and not necessarily for the press conference, which didn't help. But I suspect if you're saying it in a press conference, you've probably said it in around the building a few times in earshot of people. So I'm not discounting that at all, but I don't know, this was just something, and it wasn't my original idea or anything. But everybody's like, hey, give us that fire up speech. Well, you know what? That fire up speech is good until like the first time your legs burn or you start breathing hard, which happens pretty quick in just about any contest except baseball. So I've always kind of believed, look, it's fine to try and motivate your team. That motivation's part of your job, but a bigger part of your job for me was always tell them to find ways to motivate themselves. And I read just some sports psychology stuff that says even at 12 years old, they're more mature than you think mentally. Oh, a lot of times there's, of course, emotionally, not necessarily, but mentally, they're ready for some more complex, theories and stuff like that about sports. And one of those is find out what fires you up, what gives you your why, what gives you your go, and you don't put all that on the coach. I feel like there's times the coach has to go team, and I've heard Matt Rule talking about this, similar things where, hey, sometimes the guy needs a kick in the butt, not literally, but you know what I mean. But I'm just like, try to be the person that gives yourself the kick in the butt. When you start feeling down, try to take a deep breath and go, what do I need to do to get my head back in this game? What fires you up? Find out what fires you up. Is it wanting to do well for your teammates? That's an easy one for a lot of people. It's like, forget about how you're feeling and think about what you can do for your teammates. Now, at 11 and 12, these are introductory. It doesn't go right like that. I like to think by the time someone's getting the junior, senior of high school, you should have the majority of your players in that with that kind of mindset where they don't necessarily where they have that look where they've got that eye of the tiger and they don't need coach coming to pump them up. They've gotten to the point where they can pump themselves up, pump each other up, and that sort of thing. So I don't like the idea that coach said bad things and you know. Anyway, let's talk about Utah here. They here, here's one comparison loss. We waved that Cincinnati victory flag. I know I did for quite a while as they moved up, became ranked. I think they advanced to 17th or 18th. They ended up, I think, 7-5 on the year. So when they started getting a hold of like BYU, Texas Tech, and yes, Utah, who beat Cincinnati 45-14. And is the running game effective? They average 6.1 yards per carry as a team. They have they'll come at you with two quarterbacks. The starter is Devin Dampier. He's a 5'11", 205-pound junior and decent passer. Completed 193 of 303 for a 63.7 completion percentage, 2,180 yards. Not a lot, but over 2,000. And then 22 TDs, 5 interceptions. Doesn't get picked too often. And then he also carried the ball, and I always take out sacks, 116 times for 747 yards, 6.4 yards per carry, and a long carry of 59 and 7 touchdowns. Now, the backup is a freshman, little skinnier, 6'1", 181, Bird Ficklin. If Bird Ficklin comes in the game, you know what's coming because he was 21 of 35 passing for 301 yards and 3 TDs with no picks. The pass would be the surprise. Bird carried the ball 55 times for 512 yards, 9.3 yards per carry, a 74-yard long, and 10 rushing TDs. If they're in the red zone and Bird Ficklin comes in, or Dampier's in, let's just put it this way. Their best rusher is a 5'10", 206-pound sophomore, Wayshawn Parker, carried 133 times, only 133 times, 931 yards, 7 yards per carry, a 64 long, 6 TDs. So the quarterback position combined, or the top two quarterbacks, 17 TDs, their top rusher 6. Their quarterback's going to be carrying that ball a lot in the red zone. Let's see, their top 2 receivers, Ryan Davis, 57 catches for 659 yards, and Dallin Bentley, 42 catches for 514. They had 4 and 5 TDs respectively. They both average over 10 yards a catch. You got to respect the pass. You know, he's got solid passing numbers. So, but we'll see what Phil and who are our line coaches. Well, we'll get to that in a minute if you haven't heard. But anyway, that's your Utah attack. I'll give you the comparisons just nationally between Utah and Nebraska. In total offense, they were 6th with 479 yards a game. Nebraska was 79th with 373 yards a game. Utah was 5th nationally in scoring offense with 40.9 points a game. Nebraska was tied for 55th at 29.2. So it's really weird that even with all our problems in the red zone and, like driving down and getting stopped on the 1 or the 2 after a bunch of dive plays, we still managed to have a much higher points per game ranking than total offense ranking. So I guess we did okay finding ways to score, because if that scoring jumps that much higher, you're generally not the team that's farting it up a lot, and that was kind of the impression. So I don't know. Total defense, Utah 62nd in the country, gave up 360 yards per game. Nebraska 22nd in the country, gave up 312 yards per game, but I think about 200 of those were on the ground. Well, like 178. We were one of the worst in rushing defense. And then scoring defense, Utah was tied for 17th, though. Here they are, 72nd in total 62nd in total defense, and tied for 17th in scoring defense at 18.8 points per game. I mean, I guess you just get in their red zone and they just shut you down. I mean, that's kind of a wild stat comparatively. Whereas our scoring, where our total defense was 22nd, our scoring defense was 51st, and that's what happens when they score on you on 30 out of 31 trips in the red zone, and we gave up 23 points a game. So, any thoughts there? Let fly. Mm. So delicious. All right. Other things to talk about. Any thoughts you got on the portal? Let me know. I told you the guys going in the portal. It's not a rush to the portal this year. And we fired our offensive line coach, our defensive coordinator, and our defensive line coach. And we hired what, everybody's pretty happy with it. Rob Orich, is it Orich or Oric? Not sure on the pronunciation. Aurich, I believe. And he was San Diego State's defensive coordinator, and I believe they were like the number 6 defense in the country. And that was his second year as a defensive coordinator. First year at San Diego State, and then I think he'd been defensive coordinator at Idaho, where he turned them around as well. So he's a guy who turns defenses around quickly. Now let's see how much weight we can get on some of our guys there on the line. See what's there in the portal. I think the plan, it appears the plan is to have a nice portal haul. Is to do well in the portal. Let's see, what do we got here? Stephen Fromm says Nebraska needs a coach with a Nick Saban personality. When you fuck up, you get an ass chewing, and people are held accountable. Coordinator, position coaches to players. I've always kind of gotten the feeling that that's the way it runs at Nebraska. I mean, if the Rule has proven himself to be a guy that he will let you go, if he doesn't think you're getting your job done. Like John Butler, 22nd ranked defense and total yards allowed, and got the gate because he just didn't like the way it was being done. He spoke very glowingly of Butler on the way out. He said, I take some of the blame. I think he just said he thought it's just the personalities don't quite mesh, which you may not notice as a position coach, but as a coordinator, that's where, there's the 3 of you that are going to be spending a lot of time together. And so if it's not working there, it's not working. And I think sometimes maybe you saw, from things John Butler would say, that he didn't feel like it was working. So maybe that's just one of those things. Lots of respect, but we just don't work together. Let's Donovan Raiola go, and let me save him for last. Let's Braden go. I know it's the first year, but the defensive line play, that was Rule's way of saying, folks, I saw the same things you did. Whatever's going on there's not working. Braden's still an up and coming guy. He will have no trouble getting a job if he hasn't already yet. And then Donovan Raiola. And this is why I wonder if, just because there's such a tie, and a lot of people rip on it. I don't think they know, because you had the players and the coaches talking about how much they enjoyed Dylan, enjoyed the work he did. Like Dana both spoke very glowingly of him. Just, we wish him nothing but the best, and not even saying anything. You got the feeling it was mutual, especially with what I'm about to tell you. But it was just, hey, it's not working for him. He's not really adapting to things we thought he could. Maybe it's stuff he doesn't want to adapt to, but just never. And I even agree with Holgerson, though, where he says the way things had been going, you've recovered from Minnesota. You're kind of in control there of Southern Cal. He goes down, boom. I think the offense was done. They got a field goal, and powered by it was basically an Emmett powered offense at that point. They get a field goal, and then we go and lose, what ends up being, including that game, 3 out of 4 to finish the season. And Holgerson was kind of going, he goes, I still believe if that doesn't happen, I still believe this season turns out, differently. And take from that what from that what you will. But at that point, maybe they, I just think everybody probably came to it. Let's put it this way. Let's take a look at the quarterback room. And then I did ask Matt Rule in his last press conference, because he started talking about, with one of the things when Jeep Wade came in, the new offensive line coach, is they started putting in some more like quarterback keeper counter. I don't know if they're doing RPO or whatever, but they were saying, like, some of the things they do with Haynes King down at Georgia Tech, and he was mentioning like he wants to run him a little. So I asked him, I said, okay, can we assume, just from what I've heard here, I said, not what can we assume? I said, is it fair to say that Nebraska will now be looking for more of a dual threat quarterback and pursuing dual threat recruits and QBs in the portal? And he said, well, I don't want to say dual threat, because he goes, he says he still wouldn't call TJ O'Teefe a dual threat. Like, he's not a run pass, and he wasn't in high school. People see the speed on him, and they assume, but I think he played mostly pro stuff in high school, because he only gained about 250 yards a year, like his 250 his junior year, 250 his senior year in high school. Ran a little, but it wasn't like, Eric Crouch or, even Adrian Taylor Martinez. He wasn't running it anywhere near that clip. So that's why I say it. Everybody's talking about, let's start running all this option with TJ and all this and that. And I'm like, here's the thing, guys. I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm saying this is a guy who hasn't done it before. He didn't come from a quarterback run heavy offense in high school, or an option offense or anything like that. He came from a pro style offense. So you will literally be teaching him this type of package, plays, whatever, for the first time. Don't expect 15 carries out of TJ. I was like, don't even expect 10. And I think it came down to what I thought would happen, like 4 or 5. Let me get this. We did have that up there. But anyway, yeah, Matt Rule said, yes, he goes, the term I'd use is mobile. I want a quarterback who can make things happen with his legs. And he talked about watching the Heisman ceremony, seeing Fernando Mendoza up there, seeing Diego Pavia, and how they could, especially Pavia, can make life miserable with their legs just by, creating. It's like, okay, the play's broken down. In an interview about 3 years ago, Kirby Smart basically said the same thing. You ask a head coach or an offensive coordinator, hey, what's the most important trait in a quarterback? And it's almost always protect the football, don't turn it over, don't give it away, make good decisions. And Kirby Smart said, I want a guy who on third down, when the play's not there, can make something happen and get that first down and do it, him doing it. And, and that was, I think, after 2 years of Stetson Bennett getting the MVP in 4 straight CFP playoff games, because he got it in the semi and final of both his junior and senior years, the 2 years they won it. And that was like the first coach to be honest about it. Yeah, I want a guy who's going to go out there, first 2 reads aren't quite there, but I see a seam up to the left. Screw that third read, I'm taking off. And just learning how to do, learning how to be smart, see the field do that. He wants a guy that can create. I feel like in his own way, that's what Matt Rule was saying. And what has happened in the last several weeks, first, here we go. He goes down to Buford, Georgia, visits with Dayton Raiola and Dominic, and a day later, Dayton's decommitting. Now Dayton can run a little more. He can run a little more than Dylan. I've seen him. I've seen some nice scrambles of his on film, but I just don't know if it's quite the mobility we're looking for. I don't know, but maybe. And then, okay, here we go. Dylan's parting ways. Then I had said, like, well, if this is where we're going, and I didn't want to ask the question to, because I, and put it out there because the poor kid's just the 4th string quarterback. But I'm like, that sounds like Marcos Davila's gone. He's 6'2", 235. He is not a mobile quarterback. And sure enough, a day or 2 ago, he announces he's entering the portal. And I think he was just told, like, we're not going to throw you out, but, you're going to be at the bottom of the pile, and you're never going to, I mean, I don't know what you do with that, where you're threatening not to, well, here, have some reps running slow RPO football, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, you're going to go if you're him, and you can't blame him. It's just we've gone in the direction we were in, where we had a big guy like Dylan, a big guy like you. And, even though I've told people that Dana doesn't run a run and shoot, hasn't run a run and shoot since he was Texas Tech's offensive coordinator, but run and shoot does not really require, those aren't mobile quarterbacks they had down in Texas Tech in those Mike Leach days. You didn't have a lot of quarterback runs. Those were some of those guys were like I forget his name, 6'5" dude back there hurling, and he just looked like a gangle when he tried to run. So yeah, I thought he just figured, hey, I don't need this to make my offense work. But I think he started coming around to it. Just unless you've got a Peyton Manning type arm back there, it just doesn't really make sense to not do your best to have mobility being one of the features, because it just makes the defense struggle so much more to contain everything. You could, now one thing, Dillon, he was a pretty evasive scrambler. If it wasn't a case of here comes the pocket collapsing on him like it did. Like Michigan, I think, was the worst game for that. Minnesota was pretty bad, to where there's nowhere to go. When you got him, hey, one guy's loose, and after Dillon, he was actually pretty good at like, I'm going to stand there, hang around, whoops, and dart out, and then dart out of the way of these guys. He couldn't turn it in. Well, actually, he did turn a couple of them into long runs. Ohio State comes to mind. But I think it was just a case of seeing what these other mobile quarterbacks were doing to them a lot this year and going, well, we need one. They're available. It sure isn't going to slow down Holgorsen at all. And maybe Holgorsen now gets I felt the reins were on Holgorsen a little, and not just because Emmett Johnson was having a good year. It just felt like once we saw that line couldn't block, it was the dialing down of Dillon's passing game, which was damn successful up till that point. I mean, he still finished fifth in the country in completion percentage, was at 2,000 yards through about literally almost 8.5 games, something like that. So yeah, anyway, here's what our quarterback this is. I guess naturally I talk too much, but what the hell? That's what we're sitting around here doing, listening to me. But we have, after that bowl game's over, our quarterback room has one person in it. TJ Lateef is the quarterback room. Dillon's gone. Dayton's decommitted. Jalen's graduating, and Marcos Davila is transferring. So, and the portal doesn't open until the 6th, so there's not going to be any surprise jumping in there before that bowl game's over. It's going to be about January 10th. I mean, now it's like, we're probably trying to find a high school quarterback in the rough. We're probably looking for that and a portal quarterback. Aiden Childs comes up. A lot of Jeff Sims type posts being made. I don't know. Yeah, he's not my first choice, but there was another guy who was running for his life. We chased that guy all over the place when we played him, and he managed to get a couple touchdowns with the win. Couldn't score anything into it. And then there's a Kenny Minchie. I guess he's Notre Dame's backup quarterback, and he was formerly highly ranked, but lost out to CJ Carr this year. Hey, I haven't seen him. Maybe if they see something they see in him. TJ was asked, I mean, there's no other way to answer this question. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? Yeah, I'm pissed. Don't bring. I mean, the only guy that ever really did that was Josh Freeman. I don't want any other. I don't want a challenge. I don't want to compete. You bring in lousy quarterbacks, or I'm going to stomp my feet and do whatever. Do Josh Freeman sissy things. But yeah, we're a mobile room, and we had only one mobile quarterback. I think Gramston may be a little mobile, but like I said, he's a senior anyway. And we didn't have real mobile quarterbacks in there. Now we're going that route. Now, the way he talked I haven't, I'll see what you say in the comments here. I'm going to go straight there after I say this one last thing. This is where Rule stopped me. He goes, I'm not looking for dual threat, because he even pointed out, nobody would really say TJ's a dual threat, which means, does a lot of running, can throw it, can run it, whatever. Because he's not, his job is not to run the football. Is maybe sneak it in there every now and then. But he's like, no, he is a here's how he put it. He is a drop back quarterback with a very above average mobility. So he's not talking about going to full run. He just wants, like a Mendoza. I don't think he would have called Mendoza a running quarterback, but he could scramble like hell, and they could call his number occasionally. So he's not saying, I think, no, we're going back to, running the quarterback all the time, and then you got an injured quarterback and all that kind of stuff. So he was just saying, I want my quarterbacks to get out of there. And that also, hey, that takes the pressure. If you've got a below average offensive line, which ours was at pass blocking, turned out to be very, very good at run blocking, but not so great at pass blocking, then a scrambling quarterback that takes the steam off the rush. You can, as we proved in the Cincinnati game, you can't just pin your ears back and bull rush a mobile quarterback. You have to break down, keep it, it maybe gives him another chance to throw, but you just can't make the hard charge at him and then go flying by him when he just steps out of your way. So I think that's what he's looking for. Is he's saying, now I don't want a line that has to get it all right in pass blocking, because obviously that's something that's going to be worked on and fixed over the spring and next fall. It's not just going to turn into, hey, and now we can pass block, or maybe it will. Odds are it's something they got to work on a little. Call me crazy. Let's see what we got here now for, where were we? Okay, blah, blah, blah. Oh, Nick Saban was chewing ass. Yeah, here we go. I feel like Gary Pierce, I feel like Rule's bringing in coaches who can get top players to come here. You can't, yeah, and that's who they brought in. Oh God, I forgot his name already, but you know who I'm talking about. I think was it line coach, but he's supposed to be recruiting's his thing. Yeah, that's what we always wanted, was a John Blake who didn't have to coach much football, but just let him alone to recruit. You can be the best coach in the country, but you can't make a silk purse from a sow's ear. And there's not a better state to lay down a homily like that than right here in old Nebraska. Jeep weight is proven. Not wrong. Yeah, Steve. Oh, okay, Steve's. But there we go. Stephen Frome, when he was talking about Saban, yeah, in game, how many times did you see Saban going off on Lane Kiffin because players weren't doing things correctly? I liked how he had a keen eye for attention to detail and everything. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you got it. That's one of those where you got to play that carefully, because Saban walked that tightrope well. Bo Pelini, not so much in game, where he would blow up on coaches and players, and it was just a little much. And he admitted that later. Let's see. Yeah, here you go. Call it whatever, but if you're not from High Mountain, if you're not recruiting QBs that can escape and use their feet, then you're sunk in the college game. Like I said, you better have the Peyton Manning type of all-star arm where you can get rid of it quickly, and read things so quickly that your escape that can kind of cancel out if you've got bad escapability. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, he was all in on Jeff Sims, and mine there is like, it's like after going all in on Jeff Sims, I'm like, do we really have to do that when we got a Casey Thompson right here in town, who I feel was a damn good quarterback for us, and his leadership stuff was off the charts too. Dylan was more cemented in the ground than the Statue of Liberty. See, and I thought he had decent scramble skills. One-on-one, he had scrambled skills, but yeah, you packed that, you bull rush that pocket. There wasn't a lot he could do. Yeah, and this is what I think, what I was waiting for, is we don't want our quarterback getting injured running all the time. Yeah, but we'll take Tarkenton. Fran the Scram. Hey, where did he play his college ball? I might scoot down a little and see. I don't want to lose my. Sometimes I scoot down and I lose some of my older ones. That scares me. So I'll look down. But wait, what? Getting sacked 9 times in Minnesota was less than ideal. Now that was one that was not all on the line. That I would say 2 to 3 of those sacks were Dylan standing around too long. And then I think there were running back misses on 2 or 3 times as well. That wasn't a great day for the offensive line. Don't get me wrong, but they did not bear the brunt of that 9 number. I think they were more like responsible for 4 or 5. Still not a great game, but not that damned awful. Quit picking on Sims. He has a wrist disease that keeps him from holding things. That sounds like a Fred comment, Gary. but at least with you, I know it's not going to a darker place. Yeah, Luke Longvall, God bless you. That's all I'm going to say about that. The only time we got to see Dylan arm strength was out of desperation, that 50-yarder versus Michigan. Well, if you remember, he hit a couple, I think it was like deep balls in Texas San Antonio, or not Texas San Antonio, UTEP. Yeah, and that didn't mean much. Josh Freeman to the Giants. Josh Freeman, my God. That I'll tell you what, I did enjoy the fact that that we took care of business when our Elite 11 finalists who decommitted came back. We I think we were undefeated against Josh Freeman and Blaine Gabbert. I think we took them to the woodshed. What, 6 times altogether, 3-piece, and beat up on him too. Oh, I thought that was a joke with Josh Freeman of the Giants. He can't still be around, can he? I mean, that would have been, what was Josh Freeman, like 2005 or 6? I don't think he's hanging around 20 years later. He was not exactly full of heart and professionalism. Yeah. Oh yeah, we remember when he committed, and then his dad, who had no, I think his dad, who had no experience in politics whatsoever, got a job with the Kansas Republican Party. And then shortly after, Josh decommitted because we had visited the Texas Tech commit, because they'd already smelled out that Josh was gonna. I guess Josh was planning on fucking Nebraska over like last day, like playing it out. And so then they went just to piss him off, I think, and went and visited the T-Tech quarterback. And then that made him mad enough to decommit right then. You promised me you would. He was always like, no, don't get any more quarterbacks. Let's see. Oh, he confused Josh Freeman and Marcus Freeman. That's funny. I was going to say, had me confused. I'll give you that. What was the Tiger Shark goes? What was the whole situation with Bo and state troopers rumor? I don't know. Never heard that one. If anybody did, tell the story. Yeah, and there you go. Losing Casey Thompson was Rule's biggest mistake. It's like, dude, what a perfect quarterback to ease the transition that first year, right? Hey, last quarterback to beat Iowa, right? Oh, here we go. And I never heard this, but I could see Bo yelling at Eichhorst and Eichhorst calling 911 because he's such a just walking vagina. Apparently, there is some rumor taken as fact or something that Bo threatened Eichhorst the AD physically, and cops got involved or something. The only thing where somebody got the cops involved under false pretenses, I remembered, was the Big 12 commissioner, Gary Beebe or another Dan Beebe, and he made up, like, after he did his thing where, that last season he's sending the Greg Burks ref crew at us, and then even though we put the hurting on Missouri, we tied for the Big 12 North title. Technically, we wanted head to head, but everybody gets a standings trophy, and so apparently ours was sent in just a box filled with the styrofoam peanuts. But Dan Beebe went to Missouri's last game of the season or something to present it to them personally as a last middle finger. But then he made up a story. There is a whole thing about this. He decided to make up a story that Nebraska fans were calling him with death threats. And he went public with that. It was all bullshit. He was just trying to make us look as bad as possible on the way out because, he hadn't won any friends here. And turns out, though, that's kind of against the law. And it's not only against the law to just make up death threats, it's against NCAA law and Big 12 laws, which said if you are threatened by anybody, you contact, you need to contact, whatever this authority in the conference who handles this. Each university, each athletic department has a person that takes it up from that end. So he should have been contacting this person. They should have contacted so and so at Nebraska's athletic department, and then they get with law enforcement to get an interview with them give us all the info. We want to catch these people. We want to get law enforcement if they're in Nebraska. We want to kick the ball off, getting law enforcement involved and getting these people charged with death threats. And so, Beebe hadn't thought that far ahead. And so he had to admit he lied his way out of it farther, but basically by going, well, I wasn't sure who it was or anything. I guess I can't say for sure they're Nebraska fans. So he had to put that car in reverse really fast and and then they had like I don't know if it was the state patrol or something, but down in Texas, somebody was like, "Yeah, we need to remind people that you cannot make these accusations," and so he had to go dig himself out of a hole and go hide in a closet for a while after that. So I don't know if that got put on Bo or something. That's the only time I can remember like law enforcement getting involved with anything in the Bo days. Um, yeah, Rule's biggest mistake. Yeah, hindsight was taking Dylan over. Was it Kurt Krenzik, something like that? Uh, Craig Krenzel, or is that the one from like the late '80s, early '90s, or mid '90s? But it was something like that. Yeah, it was a guy from Ohio State, and he went to Syracuse and threw for like 4,500 yards. So, yeah, hindsight's 2020 there. Oh, kind of like Scott Frost gets Adrian Martin, and he actually looks good for a year. He has Adrian Martinez already signed and sealed, and then after Martinez is fully committed, then Joe Burrow says, "Well, he's leaving Ohio State. Would love to come play at Nebraska." And sorry if you, it's like we didn't. I guess he didn't say he couldn't come. He just say, "Well, we got freshman coming in. You're in a battle with him, and people don't too often. Quarterbacks aren't hitting the portal looking for that situation where they can have a battle. It's like they're looking for an easier path, shall we say." So then he goes to LSU, and that first year at LSU, very mayonnaise mayonnaise on white bread. It was just a so-so year. And Adrian Martinez has a excellent freshman year and is actually on short list for Heisman to start. No, seriously, to start his sophomore year, he was on some of the top 5 Heisman prospects list. So for a year, that looked good. And then here's Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Joe Burrow and Joe Brady, offensive coordinator, and 5,000 yards passing. And then if you mention going with Martinez over over Burrow, then it was just like, oh my God, this is the dumbest thing ever. It's like, well, yeah, 2 years later, everyone's a genius. I remember I got this. I ended up introducing myself to Mitch Sherman, down sitting around in press rooms with, but he's like, oh boy, he'd done one of those boy doesn't Frost feel silly now articles after Burrow wins the Heisman, or something. Maybe it's when he gets picked first overall. Well, and I went like, God, can we let this die already? And he came back and said, well, you got to admit every time he wins a big award, it's news again. And I'm like, I know. I just want it done, especially when it looked good at first. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, it's tough to say sometimes. At first, I wasn't that impressed with the Ohio State guy, and I kind of preferred Dylan. It's like, okay, maybe he won't be as flashy the first year, but my will he develop? And yeah, let's see. Well, Rogie says Dylan was 15% completion for passes over 20 yards. Well, that's true. That's not good. Let's see. Yeah, Rogie makes a good point here. You can't blame him for taking Dylan McCord. That was it, Kyle McCord. Hindsight's 2020. Imagine the outrage if we turned down a 5-star legacy player who wanted to come here. Oh, especially, yeah. What if that gets out that he's like, hey, I'm ready to commit? And I guess they said that, well, this also reinforces guys aren't looking to get in battles with 4 or 5-star freshmen. Kyle McCord, he was told, hey, we still want you. And the last thing he wanted to come here and battle with Dylan. Then maybe we lose Dylan after a year. I don't know. Who knows? But that was a one and done. And or if he knows, we maybe we don't tell him we're taking McCord until he signs first and McCord signs after, and then he's definitely transferring after a year. Let's see. People on X say there's a chance Dylan might come back. I say no way. You know what? Just the way the things they said now that they're going fully mobile and his brother's out and everything, I don't think he's coming back. Before we made the full commitment to mobile quarterbacks, I would have said it wouldn't completely shock me. Because he just didn't give me the impression of a kid that was he didn't leave till I think last Sunday. And up till then, he'd been going to everything. He'd been doing everything with the team. You saw him rolling around on the field at Iowa, trying to get the crowd going. On the little, the leg scooter. Yeah, I thought he was staying. I'll be honest, I missed that. Now I would say I didn't know. I always preface that was like, I think he's staying. But unlike the hundreds that know the inner workings at the Riola kitchen table, I do not. And I just said what he's showing me here, and the way he seemed to just really connect with his teammates, because these guys were really mature when they were talking about it. They were just like, I love Dylan. I wish him the best. Great friend, always will be. But business is business. And they were very understanding. You've got to do what's best for you, which drives the old folks crazy because it's all supposed to be them sacrificing for you. And it's like, hey, there's not one of these. Let me bug you for a sec here. Mike Royko was one of my favorite columnists. He did editorials for, I think, the Chicago one of the big Chicago papers. I want to say Sun Times. Hell, he might have switched from one to the other at some point. And he was just this crusty old fart, just funnier than hell. And I remember when one of the big outrages, it turned out later he was tricked into it. Imagine the New Jersey Generals, owned by who, tricking a college kid, because Herschel Walker ends up going to with a year left. He ends up going to the USFL, to the New Jersey Generals, for I think it was like a couple million, maybe $1 million or $2 million a year, which is just mind-boggling at the time. And people are, oh my God, Cal, can you turn your back on Georgia and all this? And the real story, Vince Dooley wrote in his biography that what they did, because he wanted to go back to Georgia, and what they did was they brought the contract, and they're trying to pressure him into signing, at Mama's house. And he's just like, no, I want to talk this over with Coach tomorrow. And I just want to talk it over with everybody before just signing. And they're like, well, tell you what, it's not going to be a one and done type of deal. So what you do is sign this for us tonight, and then we'll meet tomorrow, because they want it signed tonight. And we'll meet tomorrow. And if you change your mind, then we'll just tear it up. And Herschel, bit gullible, young kid, small town in Georgia, and didn't really know the ways of the world. And so he signed it, and then they announced it to the press the next morning before he had talked to Dooley. They did it good and early. And then Dooley said that Herschel called him up in tears, and he was just going, they told me they'd rip it up today. I wanted to talk to you first. And he was like, well, did you sign it? And he's like, yeah. He goes, son, you got to live with it then. There's nothing I can do for you. I wish there was. And so that's kind of what happened. Well, anyway, in this article, he said he'd been getting all these, as any time where professional athletes, let alone now ones in college, are getting paid, then people just lose their damn minds. Like, God forbid the people we fill these stadiums to watch actually get a piece of the pie. Well, anyway, it's horrible then, and they're all writing to Mike Royko. Oh, what do you think of this? This is awful. He should finish his education. Blah blah blah. And Royko wrote this article. He goes, well, both my sons are grown and a lot, much smaller than Herschel and nowhere near as fast. So I've never had to think this over personally, but I decided to now. And if either of my boys came home and said, Dad, I have a job offer right now, it's going to pay me like $1.5 million a year for the next 4 years. I will have to leave school. It's going to be a full-time job, but I guess I can always go back and finish later. But I just wanted to know what you thought of all this and what you think I should do. And and Royko said, well, he goes, I don't know what you guys would do, but I know that I'd wipe a tear from my eye and go, well, son, you can always finish college later. You've really just got to follow your heart on this one. But if you do take that job and can find a way to giving your dear old dad $100,000 or $150,000 or so a year to see him through his old age, I'd love that. And he was just like, are you people all insane? If this was your son, you would be, oh, get out of there. What's that? If Florida State's going to pay you $2 million, get your ass to Florida State. Oh yeah, and he says so. He goes, so I don't know. He finished the article, and so I truly don't know what you people would do in this situation. And I don't want to speak for you, But all I know right now is that Herschel Walker's mother is the envy of every parent in whatever, like Harristown, Georgia, or wherever he came from. And I just got the biggest kick out of that. This one I don't think is as much about money as just it. I just don't think it's happening as fast as he thought it would, and wants a crack. Now, here's one thing I did want to talk about a little with Dylan, so I'm glad you brought this up. Is I saw the odds released on the schools most likely for Dylan to go, and they had Oregon number 1. I think this is the last year for what's his name there. Miami 2, Alabama 3, and I can't remember who was 4, but they were also similar with 3 and 1 in that they had mobile quarterbacks. I don't think has Oregon had, I don't want to say dual threat, but has Oregon had a non-mobile quarterback since Ryan Leaf's little brother was the backup, and that's probably 10, 12 years ago? Doesn't sound like Oregon's if he doesn't like the running around, Oregon may not be the place. I would say Alabama has 2 things going against it. Is one with the way he finished, and I really didn't see him leaving early to begin with, but I don't think, was it Ty Simpson? Seems like A, he's got another year, and B, he can run a little. So, I mean, they dialed up run plays for him. Miami maybe. I can't remember how mobile Cam Ward is. I can tell you Carson Beck isn't. So they're fine with a slower quarterback back there. So Miami, I could see, and he'd have some weapons and probably a nice team coming back there. So I don't know. Next week it'll be the night before the game. I'll have an article done by then where I'm just gonna put down a quick list of all the quarterbacks that are available, or that are coming. And there should be a few more in by the 31st that have given their intentions. Like everybody was going, get that Sorsby from Cincinnati. And sounds like that ship may have already sailed. Not that we tamper, make any contact about these decisions beforehand. Tampering for these guys. Come on, if they don't do a thing about it for coaches, they're not going to do a thing about it for players, because everybody's figured it out. Everybody has third person guy. And there is just nothing they can do. Even if you can prove it, who's to stop friend of this guy from talking to friend of that guy? And that's unless you're an idiot like Lou Holtz was just truly an idiot in some things, still is. This was the guy that managed to keep his hand in all the nefarious goings on. But one of my favorite things for everybody that thinks True Holtz is a wonderful grandfather. First, multiple books, multiple people who have met this guy without the cameras around, and just say he is just one of the most awful, pissy, grumpy shitheads you'll meet. Unless you can just get him talking about Notre Dame, I guess. And let me tell you about that kid Manti Te'o, and spit all over you. But here's a fun fact about lovable Lou Holtz. In his coaching, his coaching journey, he went from William and Mary to NC State to Arkansas to Minnesota, from there to Notre Dame, and then did a retirement tour at South Carolina. And what is it that William and Mary does not have in common with any of those other schools on Notre Dame, on Lou Holtz's tour as a coach? That's because William and Mary was the only school he didn't leave on serious probation for recruiting violations, players getting paid violations, you name it. Wherever Lou went, Lou did it dirty, and he didn't do it anywhere dirtier than Notre Dame. That was, not to keep picking on them, but God, it's fun. That was like 87, 88 teams. Oh geez, who was the quarterback then? Well, anyway, like Rick Meyer was one of them. I can't remember if he was the national championship one, but that was one where they literally met all the criteria for loss of institutional control, which they'd hit, SMU with. And now we're about 6 years into that. SMU's had football back for 4 years, and I think by then they still hadn't won a game. So they were already leaning against ever giving the death penalty, putting the death penalty to anyone again. But when the next team coming up for it, not person, but the next team coming up for it is Notre freaking Dame, that kind of was the unofficial nail in the coffin of the death penalty, and it was pretty much agreed no one ever gets the death penalty again, just because they wanted to make SMU suffer for a few years, not what it ended up being about 20, was it 20, 25 something year, 25, 30 years before they ever went to a bowl again. It, just decimated the place. Houston, I guess, who had taken some beatings from those Pony Express teams, Craig James and Eric Dickerson, paid him back with like 107-0 and kept pouring it on in the fourth quarter. That I don't know if that was one of Andre Ware's teams, but it was one of those high-scoring Houston teams, and they put it to him for 60 minutes, and it was something like 107, 110-0, and it was very obvious that it was the middle finger. The only middle finger I saw given better than that was, who was that? Bubba Starling, that baseball player who was one of the top quarterback recruits, and we got him, and only silly people, kind of like Frank Solich with Carl Crawford. Sorry, Frank. Ever thought there was a chance he'd ever play a down of football at Nebraska? Whenever it was a really good baseball player, they were just they were just making that football commitment to jack up the signing bonus. And Starling played a game on ESPN against a team that I think they were already, they were like the best team in Kansas. But this team the year before, they were beating up pretty good, and those guys had decided to do the Burt Bielema and have their guys start taking some dives at Bubba's knees, like where Burt did with Taylor Martinez at least one time. It just had him trying to hit him late and hit him low. And so they did. And so that team on national TV paid this high school back with like a score in the 70s or the 80s, as they just kept pouring it on because screw you for trying to hurt our guy. But yeah, fun stuff. Anyway, that is how far I drifted off topic, but we did talk about Dylan having a chance. I say it wouldn't completely shock and stun me, but it just seems like they've all like thanked each other for each other's service and kind of moved on. Like we haven't heard anything. Well, you can't really hear anything from the Raiolas yet, I think, until he's in the portal, maybe. But I don't think anybody said, like, there's nothing bad going from Nebraska's side. Rule and Holgerson, just nothing but nice things to say about everybody. His teammates, nice things to say about Dylan, family and all that. So I think it's over, but I don't think I don't think there was any blood in the divorce proceedings. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, that's why I always get Don and Dan mixed up. Well, not mixed up, but I always have to. First, I go to Don because of the pride of Chadron and the Buffalo Bills, and then I make the skip to Dan, the douche of douches. Hey, speaking of SMU, he was the NCAA investigator. So he's on that 30 for 30, acting like he solved the crime of the century. It's like, dude, one of the fucking guys in his family ratted them out and had all the evidence. Your job, you answered a phone and you're acting, you're acting like Joe Friday. It was hilarious. He is so full of himself in that. Oh God. Let's see what else we got. Let's go. Yeah, Kyle McCord. No. Yeah, All right. Let me get this one off. Okay. Oof. Coming in. How about now? Hello, hello. Oh, try this. Let's see. All right, I'm popping around a little. Can you hear me? Hello? All right, I am back. Am I working? Hey, all right. So I'm back. Nothing too funny. All right. Apologies for that. Um, Apparently, my new cute little microphone it doesn't have the longest charge. It made it about an hour 47. So we are back. All right, excellent. Coming in, just I switched the mic over. What I was really worried was that my video feed was. I don't know how many of you remember Max Headroom, but I was definitely in Max Headroom territory there. I was going all that kind of crap. So we're back. We're rolling. We were talking about Dylan. I think we covered the fact that Scott, Tiger Shark, good for you, buddy. No worries. Thought he stole Scott Frost's laptop. Yeah, this is weird because I thought I'd solved every like technical issue that had ever bothered me, and then all of a sudden it's like all blown up at once. I'm like, why am I hopping around the screen too? All right, good to be back. Hey, we're at the 152 mark, so at least I would have gotten most of the way through, but I'm glad I don't have to end it for a second time. I guess what we call it in season 2 of like shit out of juice. I did because I let the laptop croak on me one night.
Cool. So loud and clear. Let's see where we are next on. Let's just start rolling down. See if I can get back up top here. Nope, it took a lot of the old ones away. So literally, the ones back are stuff like High Mountain Guy going, he took it so hard he deleted himself. R.I.P. brother, gone too soon. It's like, yeah, hell, if I had anything in to dump it on my head, whatever, pour one out. So here we are. Let's see. My my boss Katana practice amp sounds like that when the batteries go bad. Oh geez. Oh god. TSD. Scott Tiger Shark. Scott's computer has almost as many viruses as he has STDs. Well, whatever. Let's never forget. Keep those grudges fresh and funny. Did I see that Fred stuck his head in here? And what did he dart in? Did Fred dart in and out after I wasn't in? And that he just jumped into me trying to fix technical things, which I'm not built to do. I'm built to fix fourth quarter drives inside the 10-yard line, not audio problems, damn it. I guess one of the last things I just wanted to hear from you guys, how do you feel about Jeep Wade? I don't think there's any bones to pick there. The only bone you could chip at is that, well, it's ACC, he ain't done it in the Big Ten yet, and then not the roughest conference in the world, but he's definitely they run a little rough and tumble offense at Tech, and Tech was kind of, I think, what's the game, is it BYU that's playing Georgia Tech, and they're saying that's the battle for the fans favorite of the year or whatever, just for playing and winning fun games without being like a top 5 team or whatever. But Rob Orich, how do we feel about that? Because first power 4 job, coming straight in as a coordinator, and he's only done that for 2 years. He's been around a lot, and everybody's loved him. And when you make a hire like that, when it doesn't appear, the experience you necessarily want is there. If you're hiring him, you've asked several people about him who you trust and who are in a position to have watched, this guy's defenses play. So let's see what we got. So think about that. If you got any thoughts on Orich or Jeep Wade, let me know there. I don't want to go too deep on the staff. So what are you? Tiger Shark Diver wants to know, who do you think will be our breakout player? Well, we're trying to figure out if there's like an official. I've talked about it here. I don't know how many of you have gone on to cornnation.com to check out like the weekly polls or whatever. And I have 3 questions I want. I got them locked and ready. We're not doing that normal poll. Like they call those the NCAA React survey. And then for ones that want to send in their own questions, like Nebraska Reacts, or what we call the articles. And we'll poll on like a Tuesday and print on a Friday, approximately. So anyway, they're not doing that this week, but they're doing something else if we can figure out what it is. And if they haven't figured it out by tomorrow morning, I am just going to we can put our own polls up too. And I'm just going to throw that up there. And literally one of the questions is, who's going to be a breakout guy? Let me make sure. I'm just getting up my email here that I sent to the SB Nation guy. Sent, and for some reason it makes it look like it's blocking him, but it's not really. Maybe that's just part of his handle. Okay, here we go. So I've got 3 questions, and one of them is, like last year when some little used players shown in the Big Apple, some younger guys are going to get their shot. Well, there are also some regulars that want to prove something in their last shot of 2025. Win or lose, who makes their mark, for 2026? Like, hey, I'm first in line in Vegas. And first, I said Isaiah Mosey and or Mekhi Nelson is choice 1. Choice 2, TJ Lateef against a 10-2 team while a full-on portal search is happening, perhaps to replace him as a starter. C, a beleaguered and shorthanded offensive line, or D, a beleaguered and young defensive line. So I'm like, which one of those do I think that those are going to be my 4 choices? Who's going to pop out that you wouldn't expect there? The easy answer is TJ, but I'm still not convinced his hamstring's going to be ready. He was he was brought out his first turn in front of the press for press room weekly stuff on Friday, and he's not full speed yet. He feels great. He's echoing everything the coach has said. I'm ahead of schedule. Yeah, I feel good. I'm getting faster every day. I'm going to be full speed by the 31st. And I'm like, it's like, dude, it's the 19th, man. I mean, you going to get any full speed practices in, or and all I think of is that was everything they said about Quentin Ives, although he was fourth string, so it wasn't after getting hurt, so it wasn't like we were hearing that press conference after press conference after press conference, and then he didn't play. Then he didn't play till like Houston Christian or maybe Akron. He finally came back out, but yeah, that took like 5 weeks, and it was fine though. And every other injury, it seems like they come back sooner. Hammies always seem to drag because you do not want them full speed as long as they're feeling that twinge, because then they're just that much. They need that thing at full strength before they start really stretching it out. And I speak from experience there. There's nothing worse than a torn hamstring that atrophied and heading back in to get the electroshock treatment and get on the bike. Maybe I don't know if they send the electricity through there anymore. It wasn't bad. It was just more of like a humming sensation. They would turn it up. They said take as much as you can, which you never want to hear when you're face down on a table, and then let us know when it started, because we don't want pain, just everything up, not how much pain you take, everything up to pain, and then they'll turn it back down. And then it was kind of a nice little massaging feeling, so it wasn't awful, but you still can't run on it. So I'm just not convinced he's going to be full speed, and now it's a two quarterback room. Oh, Luke Longall, sorry man, and who's the other one? Bodie Sukup, I think. And I mean, I have a feeling it's like they wouldn't have a problem sending him out there in the non-mobile mode. And you saw how effective that was at Iowa when he was going 9 of 26 for 80 yards or whatever the hell that was. So if that happens, it's done. I don't know. You just wouldn't put Gramstad in there and hope for the best. At least he could probably run away from some people. The guys I think I'm going to go with are, I'm going to go with the running backs. I'm going to go with Mosey and Nelson, a freshman and a redshirt freshman. And it was one of those things where at the beginning of the year, Holgerson said, I'm going to use them all. And then he said, you know what? I wanted to use them more. He said, but Emmett is just too good to take out. And he wasn't tired. He said, and he got, and I already went through it about, he didn't get stronger, just everybody else weakened at a different pace than him. And while he managed to stay on that even keel, everybody else is falling off. And the impression of that is you're doing this while the rest of them are just doing the So, but I think these guys are real good, and I think you give them 10, 15 carries each on a defense that's not that great. They're the guys I'm looking for. I don't think the defensive line, I think, will come out fired up, but I just don't think that's a thing. I just don't know that that's something that can be fixed in 15 practices, or how it is at 15 they get for the bowl games. And the offensive line, I felt the offensive line had already done their improving after Minnesota. They only gave up, I think, five sacks in the final 5 games. And you saw what Emmett was doing on the ground when they knew they were facing a quarterback that wasn't going to be allowed to throw it too much, and he was still putting up big yards. Here's TJ obviously not being able to run too much against Iowa, and Emmett goes for 217 yards. And if you think that didn't piss them off, you'd be wrong. It pissed them off. They are just such an angry, toxic fan base. There's nothing to ever be happy about. Look at all the time they spend jumping in Nebraska discussions to just bitch and moan about whatever. And they were accusing Big Ten refs of not calling holding on Nebraska, which is just hilarious. So, but yeah, our line was actually, I think, a top 10 or 15 line in yards gained before contact allowed. So, and I wouldn't have thought it would have been that high. So I don't really think if the offense does well, leads a good run game, then they're doing what they've been doing, and don't let TJ get sacked. They're doing what they've been doing for 5 games anyway. So I don't feel like that's a bold breakout for them. I don't feel they're really in a place for that, but I put it there because everybody thinks they are. That they just think they've been, that the Minnesota and I think Michigan burned so deep into some brains that it just never entered the thought process that they were actually better at the end of the year. I was kind of surprised to see Donovan go, but it's also about the second or third year where they get off to a crap start. So therefore, what they're doing at the end of the year is improvement, but why did it take so long to improve? And this was an older, experienced line, and when the injuries really started to hit is when they started to improve after Minnesota. So anyway, but yeah, once again, I will say I'm looking for Mosey, and also if Mosey and Nelson have pretty good games, then you're also going, hey, Emmett had some help. And it's not to take anything away from Emmett that he's a product of the line. You just need to watch some of his like individual efforts to pound that away. So anyway, that's what I'm saying there. Let's see. Guys see Luke Gifford made the Pro Bowl. Good. I got in the vote. They had the Luke Gifford was up for, he actually tweeted out, hey, vote for me. And if there's one thing, by God, we can do, it's, am I right? Are we wrong, Kirk Herbstreit? We can vote in a national internet poll, baby. So Lucan, let's see. TSD said it's getting hard to trust Rule. I don't know. We'll see. We got 3 straight years of improvement. I just wonder if some of the hate is just what everybody's experiencing because, damn it, he's not Kurt Signetti. Something to think about. John, like I said, John wrote about that. You can go back and read that. High Mountain says Mountain West is down bad in recent years. Everyone talking up his stats at SDSU is in for a rude awakening. Interesting. Okay, good to know. As that ACC looks like the SEC versus the MWC right now. Yeah, ACC is a shit show, and you've got Miami and Florida State that were trying to get out and had to rub their butts to get them back in and give them a neck roll. Let's see. He's had success every place he's gone, though. It hasn't been a one-hit wonder. Let's see. Idaho, come on, they left the FCS. I could have handled that job. Yeah, Andrew Marshall spoke well of him. He had him there. He had him in Idaho when he was a freshman, and he said he really liked him as a coach. Oh my God, Gary Pierce. This is the only time I'm going to mention it. Still in for having a guy that hadn't played quarterback all year. I mean, let's admit it. If he's done quarterback for unsuccessful tush pushes and pretty much always sniffed out Wildcats. Let's see. So I'm assuming they're talking about the game now. This game looks like a couple of triage units playing each other. Tiger says he should be forgiving. See, that's the thing here. We listen to each other. We get along. I actually had to block a couple of people today just because they were being dicks. One guy's just being a sour, like a Nebraska fan, sour dick. I can't. What was his name? Like Mike Stewart or something like that. And if it wasn't, and you are a Mike Stewart, apologies. If it is you, fuck you too. I believe you told me to go fuck myself, and I just said, hey, watch the name calling, and then he fucked me and blocked me, and I'm like, let's just be done with you. Go somewhere else and bring their day down. Sack says Orich still improved his defenses everywhere he went. Couldn't be any worse than what we had this season. We were number 22 in yards against. I mean, don't get me wrong. We were horrible in run defense, and none worse than the final 2 games, except for maybe Michigan. Michigan might have had the most rushing yards on, so they have like 286 or something like that. If Utah curb stomps us, how will we feel? I feel like everybody's already kind of braced themselves for it. You know what I mean? My question is like, if they curb stomp us, well, we just took 2 curb stompings, from teams that may or may not be better than Utah. Who knows? Because, Big 12 definitely isn't the Big 10, but I don't know. I feel like, here's how I'll answer it. Our sorrow, anger, disappointment, whatever you want to call it, will not be as low as our elation, holy shit, happiness if we somehow pull off the upset. I feel like that will be much higher than that would bring us down. Because you know what? say what you will for our Huskers, and if there's no more sunshine pumping than this, I think. But I can honestly say, it has taught me to quickly recover after. I'm pretty much over a shit loss in under a minute or two these days. Iowa, it still requires a few more, but even then, the 4016 one, at least for that one, the good thing about that is I'm in the press box where I'm not really hanging out with people. I'm too busy taking notes, and then got to get that post game article written, and then then it's a long walk to my car by myself and to the about 4 blocks. It's not bad. And then I drive back to Omaha alone, and then I go sit in the bar, and by the time I'm back in Omaha, I'm well over it, even if I was still a little pissy about shit on the road. We got a few Iowa fans that hang around Old Tigers, but they're normal people. They're not typical Iowa fans, and we win. We don't look to drive the knife in their side, and they're not ones that are trying to stick the knife and twist on us because we're living with each other. We're living with each other in bar life, and you don't want to make the bar a place that you don't want to go. Oh well, let's see. Oh, Sachs here. I called somebody a sour dick. That's what happens at Camp Kenosha. And then, all right, that's our Camp Kenosha Fred Sacco comment is brought to you by the Huskers Happy Hour. All right. Let's see. Okay, yeah, High Mountain says, I'm not rooting against him, but thinks it's a reach higher. Be happy to eat all the crow if it happens. I doubt it. Let's see. Yeah, time to start winding her down. I try to remember to say this, and I always forget. But hey, remember you got Fred and Minnie on Monday nights on Monday Night Therapy, and I believe that's 8:00. And then at 9 on Thursdays, you've got Minnie and Greg on the 5 Heart, and those two programs. Even though Monday nights kind of had a little turnover there, but Thursday night they're still going strong year round. And I take my breaks in there. There would be, oh, damn, it's like, I'll have about a month, then it's going to be softball time. I usually wait a couple of tournaments, but the softball schedule is stacked this year. Rhonda wants at the very least a regional where you got to be top 16 on the selection day. And she had, didn't have fun, but she loved the atmosphere down in Knoxville. And I can tell you, all 3 games, they packed that place. They were the only place I've been for softball where they've got like the RVs out there. People are living at the stadium in the RVs. They are tailgate. I had to get there like 2.5 hours early to not have to park half a mile away. They've got everything kind of in, close proximity, because you got the softball stadium and the soccer stadium and the volleyball arena. I think it is all right in a row there. But man, they turn out like people do for football, and they're cooking and they're drinking, and they get good and oiled up for those games. And it was loud. And that 1-0 loss, the Carlin Pickens versus Jordy Ball pitchers deal, was something to see. That game 1 where we knocked Carlin out of there was something to see. They got the train tracks behind it. I like to call it like scuzzy pretty, because it is. It just kind of looks like, like dumpy, but there's something really folksy about the train tracks running behind the stadium, and it makes it look like it's all a bunch of garbage behind there, but really what's back there beyond the train tracks is like a nice university. So, but yeah, Rhonda Revelle would die to get to a super regional. She knows with the bats we got coming back, because this was a team that like broke every team hitting record, that almost every team hitting record they had in their history last year. And they had Jordy, and now we've got Alexis Jensen from Gretna, a freshman, who's going to jump right into the number 2 spot, which plagued them some last year. Like, you really couldn't take Jordy out hardly unless you'd put somebody away, which happened in the regional, so we could get other people in there. But yeah, softball's going to be something this year. It's going to rocket bowling, and that will be some fun stuff. But yeah, I'll have a month before that, And then I'll probably take a good month and a half, and then we'll get the movie pod going. But other than that, I think it's like next Tuesday, then maybe we're done. Maybe if we win, we'll have a quick celebratory Huskers Happy Hour the Tuesday after for a finality. But if we get bombed, I'm not really going to want to talk about it. So anyway, I'm going to Vegas. I am driving to Vegas. I'm taking off Sunday, getting there Monday, hanging out Tuesday, game Wednesday, and then I am trying to roll back to drive through, coffee up, drug up, and whatever the stay awake pills that and which also leave you for a nice long sleep afterwards when you crash. But then get back so I can party a little for New Year's Day games and then watch Georgia take on Ole Miss, and what should Gunner going against Ole Miss, and what was a shootout in their first meeting should be a good game. So let's see what else we got here to take us home. Yeah, thank God for Nebraska basketball, man. The nation's longest winning streak continues, man. Winning that crown, yeah, because I think the NIT and the NCAA winners all lost a game pretty quick out of the gate, and so Nebraska's, what are they now, 12 and 0? They're ranked 13th. I know they bumped them up to 13th. They might be 13 and 0, 12 and 0 or 13 and 0, and then they won their 4 or 5 straight to win the crown, baby, unbeatable. We are a basketball school. Oh, God. And then somebody did a Thanos little cartoon, oh, geez, going, hey, my God, we're good in basketball now. What did we have to sacrifice? And he goes, volleyball. Oh. So, yeah, the unbeaten streak, the punishment was that Nebraska will lose in the regional final in volleyball. Bastards. Yeah, there you go. We all get over Iowa quick. What can you can't let it ruin. It really, because I've discovered too that for the jerk off ones, the majority, it really pisses them off that we don't get more pissed off. They will go crazy on Twitter when we're just like, oh yeah, I know, but we've beaten you 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 11. It's like, yeah, I know. We move on. Oh, you're just jealous. No, we have 5 titles, and then just whatever it takes to set them off. Let's see. I'm good with Orich because he played, or Orich. Is it Orich or Orich? Because he played for UM Duluth. And UM Duluth hockey powerhouse. And then who's the school that's known more for hockey that's winning D2 titles now? Ferris State. UNO's in conference for them, or conference with them forever until they ended up in the national. Oh, Tiger Shark, I miss movie nights too. Yeah, I'm still watching them. Man. There's so much. Oh my God, I told you guys to get Tubi, because every time we have one, I can't find this streaming. It's on Tubi, and Tubi's free, so why not? Tubi's just got a great selection too, and all you got to do is put up with the ads occasionally, and hey, great, that's a whiz, or hey, I'm watching a couple of TikToks. Hey, movie back on. Let's go. I had I think 3 of the movies I did last season pop onto Tubi after the season ended. Fuckers. All right, but yeah, Tubi, your go-to. Lane Kiffin and the hot yoga TikToks are unbelievable. That guy, man, I tell you what, whatever. Dumpy but folksy. Iowa cheerleader story. Oh God, I hate them. Love how all sports teams except football can actually get ranked and stay ranked, except football, and still spending a fortune. Well, I'll tell you what. To Rule's credit, he's admitted this. He said, he said I had to spend so much time doing crap a coach shouldn't have to do, and begging Troy for this and begging Troy for that, and we need this and we need that. And he goes, guess what? It's my turn. They've gotten me everything I asked for. He's like, I can't ask for anything else. It's all my fault now. So yeah, we'll see what happens the next couple of years. Let's see. But yeah, that's funny because men's, women's basketball ranked, volleyball ranked, softball ranked. Baseball was ranked for a little bit, I thought. And baseball's winning league titles. Hell yeah. I watched The Hangover the other day. I hadn't watched it in a few years. Mike Tyson and his tiger. I just they show him pissing in Mike's pool on the security cams, and Ed Holmes is like, "I'm gonna go wait in the car," and Ed Tyson goes, "Yeah, I think that's best." Something like that. All right, Bueller. Oh, Mom's calling for me. Yep, Tubi is the bomb. And folks, with that, it is time to end another evening of the Huskers Happy Hour. Thanks for putting up with me. I didn't need to. It's like I guess I could have gotten a drink and praying for the audio to come back, but other than more technical difficulties, I'd rather have technical difficulties and sort of know what I'm talking about than the other way around. So yeah, I just got to be my own tech nerd sometimes. Love you guys. Good evening. Good night. Thank you again. Great comments. Great show. This has not been a season where there hadn't been a lot to talk about, and it looks like it's going to take us all the way to the bowl. I guess we'll talk to each other next Tuesday for that episode of Is TJ Full Speed? And other than that, all I got to say is love you guys, appreciate you guys, and as always, go Big Red. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Y'all be cool, as Eddie Murphy would say. Good night.